Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Astros left fielder with the bases loaded. Pitch on the way, and Jokes belts it deep to left field, and you can kiss that one goodbye. A grand slam for Corey Jokes, and the Astros have jumped out to a 6-0 lead.
Manny at first, 1 out, no score in the second inning, and Sanchez lines one to deep left. Haps back, he watches, gonna go. 2-run homer, Gary Sanchez.
Here's the pitch. It's hit on the left side and through. A base hit into left field. Sending it around third. Here's the throw from Donovan. It's offline. Simeon scores. And the Rangers walk off the Cardinals in the opening game of this series. The final score, 4-3.
Stevenson steers it across. Marchessault, and he shoots. He scores! Marchessault! Power play goal. 1-0 Golden Knights. Jonathan Marchessault. Power play goals in consecutive games. Vegas feeding through center on the right side. Carrier gains the zone with Amadio. Touch pass and a shot. Score! Brett Howden, second of the game. It's a power play goal. 7-2 Golden Knights. 2:08 to go, third period. Maturity pays off. The Golden Knights will take a 2-0 series lead in the Stanley Cup Final.
Hey, good morning. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. Well, it wasn't a shutout, which I believe it was. We were talking about like 6-0, maybe it was 7-0 when Vegas decided, we're gonna move on. We're gonna be the ones that are represented in the Stanley Cup Final. But it was 7-2. So DB, you made the comparison to football, like, when you win this big, it's like winning 56-0 in football. What's a 7-2 win in hockey?
That is Minnesota, 1983. That is an 84-point scoring explosion from Rozier, Gill, and Fire. That's 7 in hockey that's about 84 points in football. No, I mean
that's a lot. It's a lot of points.
So at the end, when it was 2-0 at the end of one, you're thinking you felt like Florida had missed some opportunities, but then Shane, it turned into your girl Stevie Nicks. Mad about her husband.
Landslide.
Oh yeah, turned into the
brought you down.
Yeah, you took their love and you took it down. Climbed the mountain and you turned around. And I saw your reflection.
Well, they need to see their own reflection because right now, Florida,
yeah.
They're looking into the ocean right now and thinking like, "Where am I?"
Total man in the mirror
Brushing
moment.
the water.
But they held serve at home. Now the Panthers. They got to go back to the house and regroup. You got to be a lot more disciplined.
They're in their own head.
You are not winning any 50-50 pucks. I sent you the graphic last night of your boy Pietrangelo leading
or as
all players.
Gosh, who was it in my own family? Was it my mom that
Pietrangelo?
I believe somebody said Petrango one time, and that became an ongoing joke.
Yeah, and just getting every loose puck. So it's a lot going on. But your Panthers get it. They left the Heat for dead too after game one. So will they leave? That's true. Will they leave the Panthers for dead
down
after
2-0?
Yeah. And remember, the series doesn't start till you win one on the road.
Eventually, they're going to win one there. I mean, they haven't yet, ever, but eventually they are.
Yeah, you're right, Shane. They are 7-0 all time in Vegas.
Law of averages. So one of the coolest things last night, I saw that. It's weird where my mind goes, but Shane, could you believe Wayne Newton can still crank that thing for the start of? How old is Wayne Newton?
He's got to be like 85.
Take a guess.
87.
I will. He's older than that, isn't he? No. He's probably 84.
81.
So how much money has Wayne Newton given his docs?
a lot.
Had to have. Like,
I mean, he looks like David Hasselhoff.
his hair looks
80.
like if the wind picked up, it may all blow off.
Mhm.
It's the wrong color. It's not even.
His face may blow off too.
Dude, that thing is stretchy. How much collagen is in that?
No big deal.
I mean,
Hey,
all
he doesn't
that-
have a wrinkle. He
all
doesn't have
that
a wrinkle
to
on his
avoid
forehead.
wrinkles.
Mhm.
But he was cranking that bad boy. I was like, "Go, Wayne." I didn't. You know, I felt like after I hurt myself yesterday doing these makeshift cleans with dumbbells, I'm like, man, at what point do I
Toss
just
the towel?
do I just not want to be athletic, or at least relatively? I can't think of a time, so I'm
no, I
gonna
was
stay
going to
with
say,
it.
I don't know if that's ingrained in you.
Then I watched Wayne Newton crank that thing like Soldier Boy.
He's
Oh,
the
watch
original
me
Lil
hit,
Wayne.
watch me roll, watch me crank that Sojo boy. That's
so
Superman.
I was
man.
like,
Oh.
you know what? This raggedy ankle will heal up. I'll continue to hobble around. It was funny too because I picked my shoes very carefully this morning. You know, I don't like to repeat a ton. Yeah, I went with borderline slippers today.
Yes, because I had asked you. These were the first pair of shoes
Yeah.
I asked you about when I first met you.
I wanted to give
Like
myself the sense that I was walking without shoes.
Like DB, it looks like your toes are about to come
Yeah,
right through
They're
the shoe.
they're super stretchy. So I went with these bad boys, but I was like, you know what? I feel kind of motivated.
That thing wet.
Yeah, that thing is wet, like Gabe Vincent's jumper. Butter. That was weird.
Not Max Strus.
No, my thing about Strus, his expressions. Strus looks like one of those guys that would be for hire if you wanted to knock somebody off and you needed a sniper. You know, like you see those contract killers in movies.
Hitman.
He looks like he looks like Max Strus. So I'm like,
Can you imagine a film with him as the lead?
but you know what I mean? They always have like those random. He looks like one of the guys. He looks like one of the guys that was part of the team in Equalizer 2. You know, the little ops crew. Strus could be in that, or maybe be the accountant like Ben Affleck was, or somebody like that. Maybe be like an adversary to Jack Reacher.
Somebody that just walks the sidewalk without anybody really
Looks
knowing
like
who you
like
are,
a regular
right?
kind
A
of
normal
dude, kind of a
dude.
little pretty boy, but
Mhm.
not really.
Ends
you
up
know?
being a man with a special set of skills,
Yeah.
skills that would make him a nightmare
Exactly. That
for
would be-
people like you.
That would be Max Strus. So between that and being captivated by Nebraska's camping situation, crazy offers. Michael Burt, the most recent from prep, who I'm telling you, I'll revisit this again after about week 3. Right now, I'm tempted to say he's the best tight end prospect in the state.
I believe I've heard that once or twice.
Yeah, I've said this, right? So this isn't new coming from me. And I said this before. He didn't even have an offer.
Right, because Sauter threw out another name too.
And I go, well, and I had to tell him, I said, Bert's a stud, you know, but he came on late.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a better second half of the season than the first half. But when you talk about like upside and kind of his frame, I don't. So the difference right now, so I'll give you the difference between the three, between Ingerson, Burt, and Stein at Grand Island Northwest, and Carter Nelson. Ingerson is the biggest, right? He's a legit 6'6" and some change. I would guess he's somewhere in the 235, 40-ish range. Maybe. I should probably ask his dad. His thing is playing at 45 degrees bursts. Like, where is his initial good? He doesn't have to be like foot speed fast, because that's not my thing. Just change of direction, like snap. So that's his thing.
245.
So Burt is got good bend. Like, I think he can get vertical on you. He looks like kind of a future tight end, because I don't think he's going to outgrow his frame. Eric's going to have to try to not outgrow his frame. He's got a lot of frame to work with. So he's going to have to eat a certain way, train a certain way. I mean, because he could wake up one day and his metabolism slows down. And I know that's what he's not a big fan of, because everybody talks about potential offensive line. He doesn't want to be an offensive lineman. He needs to be a tight end.
He wants to catch the ball.
Yeah, and he waits for. I mean, Narduzzi fires off that tweet. He hasn't even left yet. He's still in Pittsburgh. And I don't get into that. I mean, it's fine. Coaches control one another. It appears that Rule and Narduzzi have not gotten over the Kenny Pickett recruiting at Temple, but in Pitt, which is a great backstory. Carter Nelson is, again, another upside guy, but there's lots I don't know. I don't know about, the willingness to bang and hang in there, inline blocking, handling good rush ins. Like, that's a thing.
Really good athletic potential.
That's the thing, because he's not fast enough to be a wide receiver, but he could grow into a good size tight end. And I don't know, like, maybe you flex him out. Right now, I would be a smidge worried about him being a traditional inline guy. So you have to get creative on how to use him. H-back, motion him, maybe use him as an inside three. He has probably the most tools in his tool bag if you want to get creative. And then Stein is probably just a little bit behind those guys at GI Northwest, just because I don't see the projection down the road. But that's 4 tight ends
in state
with a ton of offers. And I was joking with one of our local guys who coincidentally doesn't really cover recruiting per se, but probably pays the most attention to what goes into recruiting. Like, he's probably the most thoughtful, right? There's some other guys that actually cover it for a living that he should put his brain in their body. Then they'd actually be good at their job. But it's too petty for a Tuesday, isn't it?
No, never.
There's this circle. We were going through DMs, and some of these guys just have no clue. It's sad. It's sad. But anyway, so when Iowa first offered, my initial response was, I went right back to the Sam Laporta story. Sam Laporta was on a panel in Iowa City, and the players were talking, and sometimes people roll their eyes and they want to follow recruiting, but they don't want to actually know how recruiting works. So if you tell a story about another school, the more mature you are, the more you can listen and take some information away, because knowledge is power, right? You can't operate in a vacuum and not know and be like, well, they're not going to Brad, whatever. Right? I like to learn. So I'm listening to Laporta tell this story, and Iowa didn't offer him until December of that year's cycle. They told him he was going to be the 4th tight end. He was mad, went there anyway, sat for a little bit. Now the guy's in the league, right? Good job. So I immediately thought, and I told this individual, I said, that's interesting. I said, the guys that are recruiting him at that camp know the tight end position. They have 55 comps. 55 comps that have been in the league where they can look and see.
Iowa's been there, done that.
Right? And
wow.
And he's right in front of them. So I said, oh, this is going to be interesting. This was darn near in the middle of the day. Okay. And I said, because there's some positions that they recruit where they just don't miss. They don't miss.
And recruits realize that.
And so I said, I'm surprised, because they're not usually premature. Iowa didn't offer Tyson Terry until a month ago. Right? I mean, they just bagged double-digit offers. They didn't offer Terry till a month ago. So they take their time. They're not going to rush all in. And by the time I closed my eyes last night, and we knew I knew Nebraska was coming. It was just slow to tweet that out, because by the time the tweet came out, I think Nebraska had offered a couple hours ahead of that. But Minnesota was in the middle of that. So he had 3 offers in 6 hours. And I felt like that was one of those offers where people were going to be like, ooh, there's only a few schools that if they offer at a certain position, everybody else is coming.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was one of them with tight ends.
And I just remember Laporta telling that story about how late he was offered in the cycle. December of his senior year. And they told him to chill. You're going to be the fourth tight end. They offered Burt relatively, and I know he's thinking early, man, this is my senior year. Don't worry, big fella. We watch you on film a ton. We know where you're at. But so it just could get interesting for him. So add that to the list of Power 5 guys in the next 2 cycles that will be coming out of the state in the fourth tight end. It's a lot, man.
You when you said Laporta being the 4, like, you get offered in December, like, am I going to actually do this? Like, as you said, I'm a little perturbed that you came at me. Like,
he was mad
later than
he was mad his whole career.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But notice who stays where, right? Because you win.
So do you know
you
what
win at that position?
You know what he was telling all the guys, and one it didn't work with because he ended up decommitting last minute and going to Bama to play O-line. But he's like, these guys, he said it, the good and the bad, it just depends on your maturity.
Mm-hmm.
He said they'll tell you exactly what you need to know. You just have to be prepared to handle it. And you listen, some of these guys are 16, 17. They're sitting in this room, just players,
right.
no coaches around. It's like
stargazing a little bit.
Like, man, what the world does that mean? Well, it means exactly what he said. They'll tell you exactly. Like, I'll tell you.
There's no hidden meaning.
You know what my dad used to tell me? And this is weird. No disrespect. I'm not necessarily comparing Coach Rule to you, but he said, my dad used to always say, don't ask me a question you don't want to know the answer to. He would always say that. You know who else is like that? Coach Rule. Don't ask him a question that you don't want to know.
But in the same light, ask a question and don't feel like you're asking a dumb question.
Because you have to be able to handle what comes with that. Mm-hmm. And I like to operate in the know. Right? It doesn't matter if you like me, if you don't like me. Well, so, hey, listen, you say it like that. Some people don't want to know. Some people aren't built to handle the criticism that comes with operating in the know. It's like people say, "Oh man, I want to be like the guy on what women want." Actually, you probably don't. Not everybody's built like that.
You don't want to hear those thoughts.
No, not. Listen, we all know the guy or gal that they get 9 compliments and the 10th is not, and it's the killer. Right? Mm-hmm. Like not everybody's built like that. And so I do think I think it's interesting, and it just kind of lets you know. I compared it immediately when I was talking to a couple of my buddies. I immediately compared it to the Rizak situation. So a guy kind of is flying under the radar. A school offers, and then all of a sudden he's on everybody's radar when the kid's been there the whole time. It's such a funny, fickle business.
Well, a lot of times,
which is why those guys are busting their butt in Texas, and we knew the guys that he was leaving behind to supervise the team visits, who was going to Texas, like how strategic it was. But I mean, they're trying to scour the areas just to get eyes on as many things as they can, so they're operating in the know. But while the cat's away, the mice will play. So you didn't get a chance to get a couple of those guys on campus this weekend, so other schools get to offer first. You just have to be willing to deal with that. Like, you can't. It happened with Ingerson. It's happened with Burt. You can't be afraid to get outside of how you typically do business and rush. And so, and I'm saying this to recruits too and parents, you can't take it personal. But I do know. A lot
of times it's just timing.
But 1,000%. 1,000%. And I know people want to raise their hand and say, "Hey, I'm here. I'm really good. I can play." But with a lot of coaches, they see a lot better than they hear Although in this recruiting business, there are a lot of rabbit ears. Coaches hear things and staffs hear things, and then all of a sudden there are a couple of schools, I remember with Teddy specifically, that even once Notre Dame offered, and I'm like, hey, I'm pretty sure this was coming. I just, like they just were here again. And there are still some schools that like give me pushback, like, hey man, I wish them the best. We just didn't see it. Right? Because maybe he didn't have that kind of workout for them. And then they go back and look at the tape. So it's a very, very, very fickle business. It's a hard science. And the more I watch it, the more I think I have a decent handle on it. Because now I'm watching this.
And you're in the scene.
Well, now I'm closer to it than ever. Before I was just basing it on, okay, what I could do, what I've seen other people do. What's my basic baseline for a barometer to get you to Power 5? Then I fast forward. Do they have what I think it takes to play at the Power 5 level in terms of their emotional maturity? Can they endure? Can they handle bad days? What's their 70% look like? Then I look at things like that, and I just look at overall upside. Because sometimes guys aren't there yet, and they're closer to finished products than not. So that used to be what I would always go on, and it was I felt like it was pretty accurate. Now I maybe know too much, so it clouds my judgment. You know what I mean? Because I've heard, 30 schools. Mm-hmm. I get a chance. I know their philosophy, and I'm like, well, I know why you win. Ooh, I know why you don't win. I could see how you could get there. You probably need some help, and hope your development's good. You know what I mean? Like, So now I'm calculating all that.
You're invested.
So now it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy.
A lot of times when you're telling this story of timing, when it comes to when you're getting an offer, when you're not, how people take certain things personally, it makes me think of the TV show The Voice, right? You're a country singer.
This ought to be good.
You're a country singer on stage. Well, sometimes the coach that's a country singer, in this situation, Blake Shelton, takes a little bit longer to turn his chair. He's watching, he's listening to every note. He's trying to make sure you can hit that high note, reach your true potential on stage, see where he can coach you. He's thinking about all these things before he turns his chair. Meanwhile, Kelly Clarkson or whoever else who's not a country singer turns because they hear the rawness in your voice. They hear the soul. They're like, I want to beat Blake to the punch. Mm-hmm. So just because they're trying to beat Blake doesn't mean that other people aren't still listening, taking notes, and it may just take them a little bit longer because they know how to perfect you better.
It's one of the things that we talked about with Brady yesterday. Patience. The patience thing, because right now, and we'll get into this, right? We heard about like how busy we know how busy June is, and how looking forward to July and ramping up the cycle, and then kind of chilling, but getting together with his guys. Remember how he talked about being a community guy, a man of the community. I want to be in the community. We talked about it yesterday. And then coincidentally, he drops the little nugget to Sip yesterday about camping and dorming,
which we'll talk about that too.
Listen, a lot in there. You may roll your eyes, but we'll also be able to equate it to kind of what we've been talking about the last 4 or 5 months. Seriously.
Checkmate in 9. And I mean that. We'll be back.
Rodgers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes.
Moore a drive, deep right, going, gone. Mount, got it. Stanford has pulled it off again. Coming back through the loser's bracket. And the Stanford Cardinals will advance to the Super Regionals. They will host the Texas Longhorns here at Sunken Diamond next weekend.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
Get to Omaha and play for it all. Get to Omaha and play for it all.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, 590 ESPN Radio here in town. We are live on Twitter. We are live on YouTube, and you can catch us on the Hurrdat Sports or Hail Varsity YouTube page. Are you throwing your hands up because
Shane isn't going to catch me anywhere? He won't look at me.
Because I thought it was all about, hey,
I need to
tell me we're back.
No. I can hear. Because these things. Wait, say something.
Hello.
See you later.
Hello.
Well, it's so low in this one. I want to get him a higher stool,
so we don't just see his.
But
forehead.
I think he would be too far away from the board.
No, my feet would be too far from the ground.
I know. Like when
So if you were in a booster seat, that would be a bad thing.
Why the hell would I want a booster seat?
So we can see you.
That's like
Your whole head.
That's like asking. So I'm sitting when I was on vacation for a couple days earlier last month. I'm sitting over at my sister's, and we're talking about how my feet actually hit the ground in my new vehicle, and
Opposed to the old one?
yeah, and they
Weren't you lower to the ground in the old one?
They were
man.
and they were like, well, should we get you some stilts or get you a booster seat? I'm like, what the hell good would that do? Why would I want to sit in a booster seat, be farther away from it?
Reminds me of the show with the Wayans when they were babies. They played little kids.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I was trying to get there. I couldn't.
May have been a few two minorities in that one for you.
No.
Let's go, baby. Oh yeah, man. Lot going on, man.
So if I had a booster seat, I would be higher and you'd be able to see me.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't see.
Would that help your hearing?
I can't see you
What?
anyway, so.
I know, isn't that something? My man is deaf.
Hey, Shane,
Deaf punk.
put your chin up for me.
The throw to the plate.
Yeah, see, I can't even see your chin.
Hey, saw a lot of umpires dancing yesterday. Did you like that?
Savannah Bananas. Taylor Swift.
Man.
Those guys are all Swifties.
My man, JC. The recruiting process, I can't imagine being a parent going through that. Baby steps. Totally betting on ourselves on this one.
How does a coach evaluate how much a kid will grow? I grew 2 inches from 6 foot 2, I should say, to 6'4" from age 18 to 21.
Yeah. So that's part of it, right? You try to look at genetics. I think, when they bring you in and you get measured, and some people, that's why people thought I was weird. Like,
Hey, by the way, I got a drop for that.
what's that?
Oh, good for you.
Dude stays on delay.
How do you evaluate Shane and how much he'll grow at age 46?
Shane's not. A lot of it is if growth plates are open or closed, right? One of the fortunate things that happens from when you go to the doctor, if you have a break or something, you can check growth plates. Otherwise, it's experience, right? You look at ankle size, hand size, and you try to project. So, I mean, bone density.
Is it ever about like knowing what their genetic history is too? Like if they're
you can be thrown
like
for
with
a
their
you can
dad
be
or
thrown
their
for a curve
mom.
though. Like you see it all the time.
But do you miss more than you make whenever you assess based on a parent?
I don't know
they
enough.
look?
I don't have enough data, because sometimes, I look at like,
Just like in regards to like, physical presence. Like if my dad was 6'5" and the rest of my family members were 6'5", like you could probably guess that I am going to be closer to 6'5" than I am 5'10".
Some people I can see it right away. Like I look at Christian Jones, like his dad's a big guy. Dave's a big guy. So I think Christian's probably going to grow. Right. I look at Campbell, whose dad is a giant, literally. Got to be 6'5". He's every bit of 290. Cam is 5'10", but his mom is also 5'5", right? So look at Rezak. Both of them will be 6'4", and Dad's like 6 foot, if that. He's if that. Now Lisa's tall for their mom is tall for a female. So you never really know. But it is a.
It's interesting how you brought up hands and ankles, though.
So that
and, like,
I've just done it long enough,
looking for the little things and being like, you're too small right now for your hands to be that big.
Yeah, I just have done it long enough to kind of know. So I think it's super interesting.
See, I get it, Ken, because Ken goes, mom is 5'4" for him, dad is 5'11", which is essentially like what my parents are, 5'5" and 5'11". And he said his sister is 6 foot, but my uncles are tall.
Yeah.
And like for me, my uncles were tall, which is why I'm taller than my dad, which is why my brother's also 6'2".
Yeah, he's a big guy in your family.
Well, my uncles were like, or are 6'2" to 6'3",
he looks like the oldest.
6'4", maybe 6'2" to 6'4".
Right.
He
He looks like a big, strong guy. But so I just think it's interesting, right? And I'm listening to him. Hey, there's no response yet. But the best nugget that maybe came out of yesterday was what I told you last week. Is my man Xavier Betts passing 21 credit hours? Yes, I get it. One of them was esports. Okay, full disclosure. Still got 18 legit.
Still have to pass
2.6. 2.6.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he sent me Coach Rule sent me a text, and he said, "Hey, want to be respectful? Can I call Jay?" I was like, "Everybody else does. Knock yourself out." So
some people don't even call; they just show up in our office.
He calls, right, and breaks the news, and of course, it's probably some super emotional deal, right? I didn't see it, but I know. Like on the group deal, reached out and he's like, "Oh man, really appreciate it. Thanks. I haven't thought about school since." I just was like, "All right, you can do that until summer classes start yesterday. So ramp that bad boy back up." He's like, "No, I want to get paid too." So it's like, because you got to pass, right? You want the money that comes with summer school, but you got to do school. So it like lots of little nuggets,
little wins.
Yeah. You want to get the Lance before we get to dorming and
let's
Brandon
do that.
Vogel and everything else?
Yeah,
it's gonna be a long
big pack show. Let's go to the phone, Shane. Lance, Michigan Lance on line 1. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up, fellas? How y'all doing this morning?
Ooh, fine on a Tuesday.
What's up, Coach?
Man, this recruiting deal, recruiting is crazy, man. You just never know what's going on how coaches. You think you have an idea, but on some kids, be like, "Oh yeah, I see it," and then some kids they don't. It's like I don't know, man. I remember coaching against your guy Bubot DB.
Yeah,
him and Ben Stilley at Ashland Greenwood, and Bubak was at Lincoln Luther. So I coached.
Can I say something real quick?
Oh, go ahead.
I remember your conversation on this. You nailed it. You nailed it.
I did?
Well, you didn't think. If I remember right, you said you didn't see it in Bubak.
Oh, no, it's reverse. I didn't see it in Stilley.
Gotcha.
Bubak, I did.
Okay.
You had it reversed. So
okay.
Bubak, I saw it. I was like, "Hey, man, this kid is something. He's the real deal." Stilley, I was like, he doesn't play that hard. So I didn't, so I'm like, I don't know. And so, and then you look at their careers in college, one turned out, but in the others, for what reason, I don't know about Bubak. I don't know if one could play, but I don't know why. But, now Stilley's in the league.
Because you can't.
From the effort he put in.
Yeah, you can't measure commitment. That's
right.
That's the other side that I always look at when I say, do I think he can handle the rigors of college? And typically,
right.
I'll know pretty soon. Because if you don't, listen, it's my thing, man. If you don't bark as a pup, you typically don't bite as a dog. You have to be around the right adults for that to be the case. Then it turns into a crapshoot.
Yeah, man. And like I said, Stilley turned it on with his effort in college than he did, and that happens too. That happens with a lot of guys,
especially for bigger guys.
The environment's better.
Especially for bigger guys. He was bigger and stronger than most people. And then when he got to college, he wasn't. So you got to do something different.
And then there's coaches who love coaches' kids. Mm-hmm. But then there's some. It's like, well, why is Damon why isn't Caleb Benning probably higher than on some list than others?
He doesn't camp.
He's a coach's son. He's been around. You know what I mean? Yeah, but I get the camping part. But see that again, though. Yeah, the shorts and t-shirt thing, that's tough, man. Just turn on the film.
Listen. I'm gonna smile all the way to signing day. You wait until about 2 months.
Can you tell us where he's going camping?
Listen, I'll send you a picture of what you're looking at. 191 right now.
Thanks, Lance. Let's go to Vogel next.
Yeah.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
And on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, here I am. Welcome back. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, happy to have you with us. And happy to be joined by Brandon Vogel now to continue our conversation, not only on recruiting, but Nebraska football camp season. Brandon, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good, B. How are you? How are things?
Not too bad. Got the yearbook off to print yesterday.
Yeah.
Kids edition is going tomorrow morning. So in the final stretches here, but it's been a busy week.
It's funny, all the guys and gals that guys primarily, because that's been it so far. But I hear this collective as the yearbook goes to print, man. There are a lot of folks that had to bust their tail that we've talked to so far that are like, man, glad that's over with.
It's a labor of love, but the labor piece of it is definitely in there. I think this year's yearbook came in at about 45,000 words, which is basically Catcher in the Rye for reference.
Gosh, did you write like a third of the yearbook then? You did all those previews, like Big Ten preview, just all other opponent previews. Yeah. Like you had to have written at least a third of that.
I mean, I think it ends up that way just because there's 17 teams, all 14 in the Big Ten plus 3 non-con opponents to hit on, and it's that's a big chunk. But I love doing that piece of it, so I'm always happy to sign up for that duty.
Hey, so Brandon, I know we don't have you for a ton. I'm gonna try to ask quickly. I've talked for probably 8 or 9 months, even pre-rule. I said, even with regards to how they're trying to build the athletic department and you want it to be a family deal and diversify the admin and make it a hard place to leave and what you're doing for kids to try to offset the portal. Then rule comes along and you're like, okay, that seems to vibe. They're on the same page. Then he drops the little nuggets yesterday about camping and staying at Selleck and, walking across campus and being a unified group. I know some people roll their eyes, but for me, I'm like, okay, that's it. You got your camp, you got your coaches in the same place, you got your players in the same place. I know it's a lot like the NFL in that regard, but the more you think and act alike, the better chance you have to operate under duress. I'm a common language, desired outcome, built-in accountability guy. Does that not ooze all those things, or am I just gushing because I want to?
No, I don't think you're gushing because you want to, and I don't think there's always a tendency with some of these things. Like, is this a spring storyline? Is this a summer storyline? Are we going to be thinking in November? Boy, it's a great thing they dormed together for camp. And in this instance, I think it might be one of those. I mean, a couple of things come to mind. You mentioned kind of speaking the same language. I remember working on the book with John Cook. That was one of the things he brought up that he kind of looks for as a marker for when his teams, maybe flip the switch, like they're where they need to be in his estimation. Brett Baker, a friend of mine, but also one of our colleagues in media there, producer for 1011 in Lincoln. He's an Air Force veteran, and I thought he put it really well on Twitter yesterday. There's a reason you don't commute to basic training, right? So I do think there's value, and it all goes back to
I never thought of that.
There's one that it was one of the first things that Rule talked about is he wants the guys to want to hang out, to be around each other. So this is, proof of that belief.
Vogt, extend that one step further with the staff. I mean, I was telling DB before we even kicked off today that this is a group that just doesn't complain. They just do it because they know it needs to be done. And whether it's, hey, I don't want to stay in a dorm, like I'd rather sleep in my own bed and commute because I'm not a player. I don't need to build this camaraderie within the team itself or those relationships. They do it too. And they go places because they know they just have to do that. Do you ever think at all about how they just don't complain?
I mean, I think that's a big piece of it. I think I don't know if I've thought about it in the way that you just put it in. So it's interesting.
I know, right? It caught me off guard too. I was like, oh, that's kind of deep.
I think when you look at where these coaches, and not all of them, of course, but the core group have been to walking into the situation at Baylor, I think makes you a little more likely to be like, hey, we took this job. We knew what the situation was. So let's go. Temple at that point, I understand their 2 previous head coaches has gotten, Power 5 gigs out of that. So that program was starting to kind of turn a corner, but fully got there. And I mean, Rule has spoken about, just how tough it was when he arrived at Temple. I mean, you're playing college football in firmly pro sports town, and they got that piece of it done. So I think that helps them. That said, we see plenty of coaches who, once they get kind of maybe the big gig, the destination gig, whatever you want to call it, it becomes kind of easy to exhale. But we only get to do that for the yearbook. Coaches don't get to.
So it's interesting. And Drew Down should probably be the guy that asked the question, but he was talking about his buddy that was saying how little he sees or hears from Coach Satterfield. Now, that's speaking to my heart, because I've been saying for a couple of months, it's strange how we fast forward it. And I started this conversation with you just because you like to get below the surface. We think we know what the offense is supposed to look like. We've heard it, right? Tight ends, run game, fullback, this, that, and the other. But we almost never hear from the guy that's running the offense. And I asked you, I said, is it kind of weird that we're fast forwarding and all the pressure is on what happens on the offense when Tony White has kind of been the guy that has been out in front trying to describe the new scheme? And I said, hey, what do you think reveals itself first? So I'll ask again, as you're watching this thing unfold. And, you heard Coach that yesterday, said, man, I'm super excited. 25 years. I've never done this before camping. I'm all in. He's the guy that Andrew's describing that doesn't seem to give a what. He's just in it for the team. How well will that serve this offense?
Well, I think it has the potential to serve it pretty well. And I also get a sense from the fact that Satterfield isn't quite as out there. I haven't had the chance to go back and watch as much South Carolina in the past 2 years as I would like to. That'll be kind of a summer project. But it really seems, I guess, for lack of a better term, is whatever they're going to do on offense, I have a good deal of confidence that it's going to serve the personnel they have. In the scenario, they know they're going to the degree that you can anticipate everything, but what they think they're going to face in the Big Ten. And we've seen both ways work. Sometimes you get the big up and coming offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator who's known, like, I run this style. If you want this style and hire me, we're coming in. We're going to do that. I don't know if, like I said, that part of it can work, but I kind of take the quieter approach that we've seen so far with Satterfield to be a pretty good sign, in that it's like, hey, we care that it works, not that we run what we're known for running.
Could it also be, Brandon, carryover of the blueprint that was initially brought in, where you want to lean on defense and let that success bleed into offense? And so if that is the approach that they want to go with, because that's what we're at least hearing from the outside looking in, if that was Rule's approach, if he's like, hey, I want to solidify defensive success to then bleed into offensive success.
I think the good coaches are always thinking about how that all fits together. And for me, I'm not a football coach, but if I look at the Big Ten and I look at Nebraska recently, and even going back to what we might have thought the Big Ten was when Nebraska entered a decade ago, the piece that really comes together for me is it's hard offensively to, I think, win games consistently if you're not kind of in control of, I'll say clock, but really in control of kind of the flow of the game. So, we can look at Iowa and Michigan, some of these teams that played Wisconsin played great defense year in and year out. Go look at how many plays they actually have to defend. And I think that's the piece of it where defense can potentially feed the offense. You got to have defense that can get off the field. But if you keep that group fresh throughout the game, it helps you do that. And I think that's where Nebraska's headed. And it's not where Nebraska has been of late.
If you're taking a look at, the complementary pieces that have to go, right? He had kind of the effusive praise, he being Coach Sat, for Sims again yesterday. Where are the key complementary pieces, do you think, that accentuate all the adjectives that Sims gets?
I mean, I think I think it's probably got to be the running backs. You know, when I look at the wide receivers, so like let's pretend that Jeff Sims has the best season he could possibly have. What does that look like? The best part I think I can count on is, oh, the run game must have been a really, really strong complement that allowed him to just use the tools that he has. Wide receivers and tight ends, like you'd like to, I think, have a little bit more returning production than Nebraska does, but that's a place where people can emerge. Like somebody's got to catch those footballs, right? And if they're on target and they're on time, then it makes that piece of it a lot easier.
Good stuff, folks. We appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much. Have a great Tuesday.
You too, guys. Thanks.
When we come back, let's continue the conversation of the dorm rooms because I have questions and I need them answered.
I'll try.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes.
And a pass across the flicks away. Into the corner. Taking it to goal line. Barbashev to the left. Martinez shoots. He scores! Alec Martinez. 2-0 Golden Knights. 2 minutes to go first period. The Knights killing off, and they add to their lead. First goal of the playoffs for with Watt. Watt run off by Verheen into the left corner. Watt walks out in front and scores! Nick Watt! 3-0 Golden Knights. 3 minutes into the second period. First shot of the period. And the second goal of the Stanley Cup playoffs for Nicholas Watt. He was down in the left corner. Found a soft spot deep on the left wing, and he just took it.
Rogers and Benning will
Playoffs for Nicholas Watt. Somebody lost the stick. Somebody.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. We appreciate having you along for the ride. Before we get into some camp conversations, I want to take a moment and tell you about Dingman's Collision Center. Dingman's is the place to take your car if you have any type of issue with it, whether it's a literal ding and you need it buffed out, whether you need some major repair on your car, you need, your tires changed. Because I know I had to buy some tires the other day, and I wasn't at Dingman's because they were closed, but Dingman's helped me find a place to get my tires changed so I could get back on the road. I am in need of an oil change now that I just made my trek back from St. Louis. I think it's 200 miles until it's up, but I will be taking my car over to Dingman's because of how they treated me in previous instances.
That's
and I
funny
have
too, because you're like, oh, I forgot I had
an
oil
oil change
change.
coupon.
Are you
right?
guys going?
And it adds up in a hurry too, man. Like, whoo.
And you know what's crazy? My experience with Dingman's hasn't even been at Dingman's. It's been away from Dingman's. It's seeing Darcy at our live breakfast show. It's calling Darcy when I have a problem, and even though they couldn't fix it, she referred me to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
It's those moments, those relationships that I've gathered over a short course of time that make me not want to go anywhere else.
Oh, I get it. Customer service, man. People treat them like you want to be treated. I can't even remember whose song that is. Is that Montel Jordan? Shane,
Treat you right. Well, that's
treat
a Bible
'em
verse.
like they want to be treated. No, Aaron Hall.
There's a
Who
song
is
for
that?
everything.
I know. Keep going. I'll figure it out.
We'll just see where it goes.
You know what?
Is that Aaron Hall?
I got a question for you. Speaking
right,
of
what do you want?
songs, I'm going to do this quick before we get into this camp talk.
Okay.
So Scotty McCreery performing after the
Father
volleyball match in
MC.
the fall. Scotty M.
Okay.
Are you a Scotty guy?
I could be.
No.
Depends on what you ask.
I just know you're a music guy.
Yeah. Not really.
So I put together this list just for fun. I'm like, if we get to it, great. If not, and I kind of figured we would because you would sing at some point throughout the show. I'm gonna give you a list. There's 10 things on this list. I want you to tell me if it's a Scotty McCreery song or if it's a Hallmark movie.
Blinded by the light.
Okay. That too. Do you think you could do it? How many do you think you'll get out of 10? Out of 10?
3.
3. Only 3
Oh,
on a 50-50 shot?
I like to be 300.
You'd go in the Hall of Fame if you're betting 3.
This is Sparta.
Shane, how many do you think he'll get out of 10?
Give them nothing.
All right. He doesn't think you're getting anything.
Take from them.
Everything.
This is Sparta.
Lovely Anitis.
Hey, but don't kick the messenger down a big drain well.
Hey, so
I'm gonna go.
My buddy Shane, our buddy Smooth Red, sent me an excerpt from 24th and Glory
Mm-hmm.
about my dad and some of his like storytelling of things that they endured while being on the road, and stuff being hung in effigy, and them not being able to like stay in hotels on the road and stuff when he was coaching. And some of his quotes, I'm going to send it to you. If that is not 65, 70, 80% of my personality, I don't know.
Send them my way.
I don't know what is. Like, ooh.
I may take the over.
Dude, like, I was a little sappy last night. I'm like, dang you, Red. Why'd you send me that? But anyway, I rapidly go down a rabbit hole. Keep going. All right, I'm ready.
Country at Heart. Country song or Hallmark movie?
Hallmark movie.
Christmas in Heaven. Country song or Hallmark movie?
Song.
I don't know.
Home. Christmas.
Michael Bublé. Song. Even though it's Scotty McCreery.
You sure?
No. No.
Water Tower Town. Hallmark movie or song?
That's a song.
That's a song.
Yeah, go song.
Thanks, Shane. Oh, come on, Shane.
Autumn Dreams.
Sounds pretty sucky.
Game over.
Unless you're like envisioning football success in the fall. Autumn Dreams? Wow, that sounds Cairo syrup.
Scotty, will you hear that at the Scotty McCurry concert?
Song.
The Waiter.
Song.
Harvest Moon.
I would have said movie.
Nobody asked you. Movie.
All of My Heart.
Oh, Lord.
Are you going to hear this after the matches in Memorial
man.
Stadium, or are you going to be watching it on TV? All of My Heart.
Fudge. Again, sounds sappy. Song.
Our Christmas love song.
Oh, Lord.
Movie?
I'll go with the non-obvious.
Gosh, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This Is It.
Make no mistake where you are. Movie.
Uh-oh. All right, how many do you think you got right out of those?
I don't know, 4.
Yeah, I would have guessed you're batting 400.
Hey, I'm tired of
DB.
hearing from you right now, Shane.
DB
What?
got 7 correct.
Let's go. Let's go. Is that
Hey, you underestimate yourself,
Is that
man.
Hall of Fame worthy?
And most of those you said were songs, and yes, you will be hearing a good majority of those after
I'm not.
Nebraska takes down the rest of them, right?
I'm not listening.
No?
No.
You're not staying for the Scotty McCurry concert?
Mm-mm.
Come on.
Not a chance.
Would you stay on campus in the Selleck?
Yeah, if I had to. If I had to.
So that's
And
an
I-
interesting thing. If I had to,
Yeah.
when you say had,
Mhm.
you're a member of this team. If you had to stay there
Yeah. See,
versus a want to be there,
I'm not afforded the luxury of real time as a student athlete. I know as a student athlete, I would have some reservations.
why is that?
Like me back then? Oh, heck no. No. I mean, and I'm not
Is
saying-
that just because of the culture of the program and it just didn't fit it? Or is that a you thing?
It's
not what I would want to do.
It's a total me thing. It's just not. It would not. At 18 to 22 years old, it just would not have been my thing.
Would that force you to show up with a bad attitude because you're doing something? You're going home
Why
to
you
something.
asking
You're
me
starting
such hard
something.
questions?
I don't know. I'm just curious because I want to get into the mind of an athlete here.
Maybe the first year or year and a half, I probably would have showed up with a bad attitude. Now, keep in mind, I'm just being 100%.
Well, and I
honest.
appreciate the honesty
I'm just being 100%.
because this is helping me.
Because even though I felt like that was the culture, like the culture was, it was much stronger as I got a little older than when I first got there. When I first got there, I'd be curious to see what some of the older guys said, but I don't. I mean, this is just my opinion, right? I think we had morphed into a very selfish team into learning to be about one another. I think the straw that broke the camel's back was that 92 class that graduated kind of paved the way in terms of change, but we didn't get the Unity Council until the following year. So we were just morphing into stop worrying about draft status, stop being individual, stop having it be about you. I mean, because we had some selfish guys, and you could tell that they were selfish.
As you probably should on a team that wins champiompips.
But we hadn't won yet. Remember, we couldn't get over the hump.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
Yeah,
and
not yet.
we couldn't get over the hump because
but you were close.
Part of it was the chemistry. 93, very unified bunch, equally as talented as 94. Maybe better defensively. Maybe better defensively in 93 than 94. But probably a little bit more unified and battle tested in 94. So I probably would have went with a little bad attitude because the culture wasn't quite set. Now, it did become a place where, and I've said this before, the culture became a place where it was such that you were afraid to complain out loud because somebody would tell. And then you'd be the guy, hey, man, I heard you say. You start looking around and be like, man, who told? Like, you guys, come on, man. You know, shoes would come up missing. You know, Jason Peter told the story. You know, I was a guy that wanted to wear my own shoes sometimes. And somehow, some way, my shoes got peed in, right? They disappeared.
Somebody did that in high school in our locker room.
So, like, I would have probably went in with a bad attitude, but I would have either had to fight my way out of it, or I just would have been so miserable only having like a person or two to complain with. I'd have probably got on board.
You know what's interesting? For me, going back to college.
They were the Olive 11s too, by the way, in case anybody's wanting to know.
Going back to college was always like I just wanted to be surrounded by the people that, like, how do I put this without like offending?
Just say it.
The people that, you know, you always feel like you could talk to without it feeling like it could hurt somebody or you feel judged. You're surrounded by just your friends. You're kind of doing you, right? You're on your own, you're independent. And that's what I liked about going back to college versus say like a Thanksgiving break or something. Like, I loved being around my family for the holidays and all, and I love spending time with my mom and my dad. But in college, selfishly, I always wanted to be around my friends more than I wanted to be around my family, because it was kind of what it was hard to leave my family after high school, right? But then after the first semester,
for me, not so much,
right? But for me, the first semester, it was like, like, this is cool. Like, I'm kind of doing me now. I get to make the decision. I don't have to answer to somebody when I come home. I can just do, if I wanted to stay out till 3 a.m., like, that was my decision. Like, I could stay out till 3 a.m. If I wanted to, you know, push my luck in certain cases, like, it's on me at the end of the day. So it's up to me to learn. So I kind of liked having that ability to mature on my own. So when I think about it from this example of, hey, they're staying in the dorms, yes, it may be looked at as kind of weird to some, but in hindsight, I almost think, like, is this what the players want? Like, do the players just want to be there, surrounded by their friends, surrounded by their teammates, because they don't ever want to leave, because those are the people that they depend on. Those are the people that push them every single day.
Totally fair.
Those are the ones that hold them accountable.
Now, let me ask you something real quick before I respond. Is this you at 8 years removed, or is this you real time?
This is me in regards to my point I just made.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I wanted to do when I was in college.
Okay. So you think, so you would have been all in on the dorms. Okay.
Yep.
So, I like that perspective. Just food for thought, but doesn't sway me yet. So let me give you both sides of the story. With this team and when and how he started, this staff, right? Total transformation from day one. I want you in class. We're going to study hall. We're getting away from the online thing. We're going to dress the same. We're going to do the same things in the gym. You're picking teams and random captains, and you had to learn on your own. Stop picking your buddies because they may not be good for you. All those things, they matter. And he did them so early that you have a chance. You can turn around a guy like Tommy Hill if Tommy Hill feels like anytime he gets in his feels and wants to act a fool, that he's by himself. See, you're less apt to be like that. It's like, it's when you turn on the lights, right? What typically scatters? Roaches, right? Because if you have roaches, because they like to be in the dark. That's when they do all their dirty work. But when the lights are on, it's like, let me keep my little narrow behind hidden. Like this, they're not going to be for me here. I could get killed by exterminators. In this example, the exterminators are the greater good. Everybody else. So if you got 12, 15 bad seeds, you have, you know, the other 90% or the other 95 guys represent the good soil, those bad seeds aren't going to prosper. So the earlier you do that, the more apt you are to want to be around like-minded people. But it has to happen early. And because I felt like this team coming in, it's funny you asked me this. I felt like they wanted to be led. This team was yearning to be led.
They were waiting for somebody.
It's why they responded to Mickey. It's why they responded to Coach Bush. They wanted a different. Now, they didn't have enough time to trim the fat on the fly, but Coach Rule and this staff did. Hey, listen, this may not be for you.
But hey, I'll tell you what, they seasoned it at the end.
Right? This may not be for you. And if it isn't, hey, cool, we're going to support you. We'll help you get someplace else. But this is how we're going to do things. I go back to yesterday when we talked about him using the word classy. See, and you said, and I said, oh, so not so much I can't remember the word I used. Not so much it
was like a respect classy. Like,
yeah,
hey, I have respect for you.
much a pedigree, more of a way to do business.
Right.
The more that they're ingrained in that, the more that they want to be that. And especially if you start to see some positive dividends, right? If now all of a sudden Tommy Hill gets to come back and play and I just use him because he's a nightmare last year. So now he gets to come back and he gets to play defense. He got off to the slow start, wasn't super receptive. They took the picture of him at practice. Hey, who's the new guy? He's not the only one. There's a handful of guys, right? There's a lot of growth. Miles Farm. There's a lot of guys that had to Xavier Betts. So even a guy like Ty Robinson, right? Everybody thought Ty was going to transfer. Oh, Ty Robinson's leaving, man. Man, listen, I watched from afar, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, Ty Robinson sit on the stairs and talk to Coach Rule. And this is probably 100 yards from me. Nah, probably 70 because I could still see. And I'm like, that interaction right there, I wish I could have taken a picture because it should have been the cover of a Hallmark card. Speaking of Hallmark,
I mean, it was gold. It was absolute gold.
And I could just see like investment in leaning. I'm a total voyeur, right? Like I'm leaning in, I'm watching body language, and I see the arm around the shoulder. In my head, immediately, like, oh man, that guy ain't leaving. like that's exactly what I remember that.
And you're a body language guy.
Totally. And sometimes I'm wrong, right? But it's kind of everybody kind of has their rules of thumb. That's kind of like a thing for me. Some people fool me, right? My son fools me, right? He does. But internally, he's internally defiant, even though he's a really good person. He just not going to do what everybody else is doing. So anyway,
I feel that,
which is why he's betting on himself.
When I picked a college, weird side note, everybody always assumed I was going to Missouri State because that's where my family went. That's where my mom went. My older sister went there. My brother went there. I had a basketball coach tell me, like, we were talking about it just in regular class. Oh, where are you going to college? Where's this senior year? Hadn't chosen yet because I was just kind of waiting and see. Well, first off, I was waiting on baseball scholarships too. So I was just kind of watching them come in. And at one point, he just skipped right over me and goes, well, I know you're going to Missouri State. That's where everybody goes.
Yeah.
Guess who didn't go to Missouri State because of that one thing?
Yeah. Guess who didn't go to Omaha Central, where my 4 siblings went and my dad was an administrator? Me.
I'm like, I'm going to pave my own path.
And guess what everybody else told me? Oh man, the brothers don't play baseball at Northwest. Oh, really? Yeah, they do.
I'll turn them around.
Yeah, they do.
It'll be me.
Kenny Crandall, he went to Benson. JJ Archer, he went to Central. Kamar Barti, he went to Central. All those other guys didn't go to Northwest to play baseball for Bill Olson because brothers didn't play for Bill Olson. Yeah, they do. This one will. So I went to Northwest, and I remember the conversation. It's like, you're not going to. You'll be the only Benning to not go to Central. Yeah, I know. I'm willing
for that.
I'm willing to roll the dice, right? So going back to the dorm thing, he's always talking about modeled behavior. Caring, not coddling, those kinds of things. He's made them uncomfortable from the jump, from the very jump. You're watching me move. You're going to watch my biomechanics with me on film. You're going to look over this overhang and just stare at me. I'm not going to touch a weight. No, you're not. You know how awkward that is? Stop watching me. What do you if I just stare at you for X amount of time, at some point you're going to be like, you do something, right? No. So he changed the food. He changed the way that they work out. He changed the workout times. And he stressed the coaches too. Not stressed them out, stressed them. Took them to places that they're not comfortable being. Hey, we've heard the pressers. Some of that recruiting stuff and not resting on your laurels because you're Nebraska, he wasn't talking to just the players. He's talking to his staff. So when he gets the chance to get these guys sequestered and on their own, those guys probably are jumping at the chance because it's all they know with this staff. So they're probably like, they probably expect it or something like that. I'm kind of speculating. I got to ask some of the guys, but I bet you they expected something like this. But what did he tell us a couple weeks ago? Listen, I'm a community guy. I want to be of the community. I'm not hiding at home. Like, you'll be trekking across campus. You're going to have to interact. This isn't just about you. This is about you being the university's team, the campus's team, because the more you realize it's not about you as an individual, the better chance you have to be successful. So he's going to stress you. So maybe for these guys, it works. And to be honest, it's music to my heart. When I saw that, and now granted, we have a little bit of a head start, so I'm not like, they're camping, right? They're not there. But when I heard that, all I could think of was it looks like he's building a wall, but what he's doing is he's letting you know that because you're going places that you ordinarily wouldn't go, there's a greater good. And what have I always said for 15 years doing this, doing shows? The minute you can cheer for someone else and it's at your expense, that's when the magic happens. If I'm on a sales team and I can cheer for little Bend over here because he's selling his brains out, and I know that a rising tide eventually lifts all boats, even though I'm not getting the awards, I'm going to work. People roll their eyes at us all the time. We do a senior retreat. We camp together. Coach, they asked the staff to camp together. I thought Coach Frank was out of his mind. I'm like, man, it's 98 degrees out. What are you guys doing? You think when we're down 28-14 at the half, and I got to give some meltdown speech, that it's not about being for one another and going back to those days? That stuff, ultimately, I don't know. I can't give it a hard number like Swiss, Gouda, Parmesan. I'm not trying to be cheesy. What I'm telling you is when it's not just about you, something else happens. For some people, it's parents. Oh, now that I have kids. Or, oh, now that I got married. Or now that I'm part of a team. How often do we see these behavioral changes happen when it's not just about you? Because you can hide. You can hide. When you're around other people, the lights are on. There is no place to scatter. So them doing this, I don't know how many wins it yields, but guess what? When it's 13-10 in the fourth quarter in Minnesota, and you got to look at the dude next to you and you're a little bit tired, you'll have a story to tell based on what happened at camp. You will. There'll be some sort of analogy. The staff, hey, man, didn't like that play call. What do you mean you took over play call? What? Oh, that's right. You did my wash, too, at the dorms.
What does this remind you of?
I got your 6.
Remember the Titans.
Kind of.
We'll be back.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. Hey, we're about halfway through the show, so this seems like a good time to set up the show, right? Because that's what I do really well.
Probably should have got to that, but hey, the show happened.
Joel Lorenzi coming your way at 9 o'clock. We'll get his thoughts on the NBA and a few extra thoughts on
nice
Creighton.
Piece comparing both rosters with Nebraska and Creighton.
Indeed there was. And then we will get into Super Regional Talk with Aaron Fitt, co-editor and national writer for D1 Baseball. That will close out the show. We also will have the sports six-pack, which we probably should do in the next segment because, as all of you know out there, DB and I are really good about keeping our answers short and sweet for that. So as little time as possible. No, we need all the time we can get when we do the sports six-pack. That presented by Zipline.
I'm watching all this tape on Bert.
Just now you're deep in the rabbit hole.
I am. I shouldn't have started on Huddle, but I knew what we were working on today at school, so I'm just like, and of course we open with them prep,
so it works out. It works out.
But anyway, like I don't know. I enjoy this.
I
enjoy this kind of stuff.
It's interesting you say that. It's all about what you enjoy. You enjoy that thing because you know it works. Right?
Yeah. I didn't used to. I didn't used to.
You can't ever do too much.
Listen, we had this conversation. This is probably about 4 months ago, maybe, with one of the guys on the staff. He's not a random, but not doesn't come up a ton. And we just kind of in passing, you're chopping it up about something, and he's asking me about my experience, and you're talking about watching film, and he was referencing watching film with Coach Rule and how different it is. Like, because I think, and all I could think of is there's an art to watching film, right? It's not just about you or watching your highlight play or following the ball. Like when you really get good, there are lots of little intricacies that you can look for. And he talked about the experience because you asked me a question. What'd you ask me 2 weeks ago you asked me about? You said, hey, do you think Coach Rule watches film to figure out?
Oh, yeah.
What'd you ask me?
I said, hey, do you think he goes back and watches old film and then sits there and thinks, ooh, if that play would have gone differently, or this point in the game, if this would have gone just a tad bit differently, that would have changed the entire outcome. And that's figuring out a way to win is essentially how
it's a really good question.
I pose the question.
Which is a lot of kind of how he likes to watch play sequence, pet plays, families of plays, watching the team. Like, let's just say let's say he's going through Colorado and, turning the outcome, a play or a series that he think was kind of the difference, how to avoid it, what happened, why after watching a certain amount of games do I come back the very next day at a spring practice and go through speeches about one game at a time? Why, when I go talk to the chamber, is one game at a time on my mind? You know why? Because I think he's seen enough film. Now, I'm speculating here. I think he's seen enough film where he's thinking, you know what? That's not going to happen to us anymore. We're going to stay in the moment. We're not going to have an onside kick be the reason for the treason for a derailed season. I'm just not going to let that happen.
No doubt to me about that.
And then I go back to my cycle of the 60-second anatomy of a play, right? Huddle, get the play call, formation recognition, play snaps, walking back to the huddle, evaluate the outcome. At the very end, before you start the next thing, own it, move on, next play.
Because iron sharpens iron.
I think I maybe have tweeted out that picture, and he used it in a clinic, so I think I can. But it's not just football; it's actually how you should probably do life. It's probably actually how you should do life.
Whether you nailed it or whether you failed.
But I listen. I
move on.
I started to put it on my Twitter. I change my Twitter deal every couple of hours, it seems. But I almost put
your profile photo.
Yeah, I'm Robert McCall.
You are
from The Equalizer.
Well, every time I scroll across and I'm like, I always think that it's a burner account of you. Yeah. Because it's a new face. It's the same name.
6x9 smoking burners. Yeah, exactly. Wow, is this our buddy?
Hey, let's go to the phone, Shane. Take a moment to talk to Asian Wyatt. What's up, Wyatt? How you doing, Wyatt?
Doing good. How are you guys doing?
Good.
What's up, buddy?
Good. How you doing?
Doing not too bad. First of all, if you're going to go get Chinese food at Wong, you gotta get the Korean food there. That's the place to.
Okay. This is what we're doing today.
Yes, get him, Wyatt.
Yes, sir.
That's the best traditional Korean food restaurant in town. I know.
Well, that's good to know.
But that's the place where Michael says where the bibimbap is, where that might be his last meal.
Okay, I'm on it. I'm on it. Note to self.
All right. Anyway, because you guys are talking team culture, I had a question is, what I've always kind of wondered too is especially the last few years, guys that were starters, even though they're starters, they probably didn't have the best college experience because, when they kept losing all the time. But if, say, those same players were on a better team, but they were more backups and didn't get as much playing time, would they basically have a happier college experience overall?
Ooh, that's tough. Ask me one more time, Wyatt.
So basically, if a guy were a starter on a losing team,
yep, or a backup on a winning team,
yeah, would their college experience be better?
Ask Alex Moran from Blue Mountain State. He loved his life.
Gosh,
I would say a backup. You would prefer to be in a winning environment. Because I played on a losing team in high school for baseball, and not to say that my experience wasn't good, but it definitely would have been better if I played for a winning team. And even if I were a backup, I would know that I'm training with the best, I'm working with the best coach, and I can constantly try to put in the work to be the best in order to try to get into that starting role. Does that make sense? Or is in this hypothetical, can I not make it into a starting role?
I think hypothetically you could. There's a lot of variables you can put.
Right. Yeah. So I'm afraid to give a blanket answer, Wyatt. And I typically don't wimp out, but I think it depends on what you're there for. Because a lot of people will tell you college is about making memories, right? And the experience. But it depends on what your goals are, right? If they're individually driven, it's probably more about the individual experience. If it's team driven, then it's probably more about the team outcome, right? I felt like if I just use myself, and I'm being 100% honest, I would say to myself, okay, I don't have to start all the time. I want to play enough to be successful, because if I'm successful, then people from Nebraska get drafted. That's how I thought, right? Because when I went there, I didn't necessarily think, ooh, I'm going to the league. I just wanted to contribute because I felt like if I could contribute, that would be good enough. So, but I don't know if I could lose all the time either. I was 0-9 as a quarterback, as a junior at Northwest. I didn't win one as a head coach there. But at no point was I like, ooh, if I just had a lesser role and we won. You know what I mean? So I think it just kind of depends on what your goals are.
Yeah.
That's actually a good,
it's a really good question.
It is. I mean, if you're Bama or Georgia, you think half those guys know that they don't have to. I mean, who was it? Michi? Who was the wide receiver that was like 6th on Bama's depth chart, and he was playing like 3 years in the league? Just because he was at Bama.
Yeah. Was it John Mechie?
Yeah.
No. I don't think he's played enough yet.
It was one of those guys. Where'd the question come from, Wyatt?
I don't know.
Just thinking. He's just thinking today.
Deep thinker. Hey, can I say something without you being offended? Because it's Japanese, so it doesn't really count.
Is it about miso soup?
Maybe.
No, but I got some Japanese barbecue sauce.
Okay.
And I went with it was basically the basic. There were like 6 different ones. And it tastes a lot like what they put in like fried rice. What's the secret? Is it mirin? Is it a sauce? Like what transforms the fried rice?
I think, I know for like a restaurant, it's the heat on the stove that makes it different than you can make it at home.
The heat?
As far as like an ingredient goes, I don't have a good answer for you.
That's all right. Well, you can't.
We appreciate the call, though, Wyatt.
Thanks, Wyatt.
All right, man.
Have a great Tuesday. We'll be back with the Sports Six Pack.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Time now for the Sports Six-Pack on Coffee and Cream with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning. Presented by Zipline Brewing Company, makers of Dear Old Nebraska Brew, the official beer of Nebraska alumni.
Hey, we're getting close to the College World Series, and where should you spend your time while you're downtown? Well, there's two places, but I'm going to tell you about one right now, and I'm going to save the other for later on in the show. Go check out Zipline's Downtown Omaha Tap Room. It's right across the street from the Chuck, and it's next to, I believe it's like right in between Slow Down and Film Streams.
Slow down.
I'm trying to map it out now. I'm walking downtown. Where am I going? I'm pretty sure that's exactly where it is.
Right along 10th Street?
It's right along 10th.
Yeah.
Designed to quench your thirst for action, pouring fresh pints directly from their iconic shipping container. They promise to keep up with the fast pace of your busy lifestyle and the fast pace of the College World Series. That's where you should enjoy the game. Find yourself a spot at the downtown Omaha tap room any day and enjoy a zip line. Shane, kick us off.
Question number 1.
Based on their super regional draw, who would you say is a lock to advance? Who would you say would surprise you if they lost? And what matchup would you say intrigues you the most?
One more time.
Okay, based on their super regional draw, who would you say is a lock to advance? Who would you say would surprise you if they lost? And what matchup would you say intrigues you the most?
I got to take a look at the Super Regionals bracket as it unfolds.
I'll go first. I'll lock Tennessee over Southern Miss. Last year's tournament faves, elite pitching, pretty consistent hitting. Difference-making hitting at that. And just Southern Miss as an uphill battle. They played a long series in the Auburn Regional? Had to face Penn twice. Deep into games, long games that they played against Penn. I'll go with Tennessee as my lock. My surprise loss? Was that it? If they lost, LSU would surprise me if they lost to Kentucky for a lot of the same reasons. Right now, their offense is arguably the best power hitting offense in college baseball. So that would surprise me. Intrigue. Oh, well, the intrigue's the 4 seed, Oral Roberts.
It's what matchup?
Yeah. Oh, so Oral Roberts, Oregon. That would intrigue me the most.
Okay.
Gosh. My lock, I like Tennessee. That's safe. Even though Tennessee sleptwalked through a lot of the regular season and they were awful on the road.
Mm-hmm.
You know who I would be actually surprised, though, if they lost? Would be Wake Forest.
Yes.
Because Alabama came on late. They're weird.
Mm-hmm. But they dealt with a lot of adversity this season.
I still don't think they're that good, though, in my head.
Mm-hmm. Well, Wake Forest is just so good that it would just be a complete surprise.
I would be surprised. And I almost use lock and surprise in the same vein, but I'll differentiate but a little between the two. And what was the last one?
Intrigue, the matchup. Which one intrigues you the most?
Definitely TCU and Indiana State.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
I kind of like the Oregon one, but the TCU Indiana State thing is interesting because Indiana State's fought uphill all year, and TCU's playing their best baseball.
And they foregoed hosting the regional to honor a Special Olympics event that's taking place. That's really cool. That's a really cool thing. But that, as much as people say that doesn't matter because, but your best experience is probably playing on the road if you're a college athlete. Not in this case. I'd rather play in front of my fans.
We were watching at one point yesterday, I don't know, 4:30 or something, and TCU had just hit another home run. And Caleb goes, "Man, that was a bomb. Like, why is it so quiet there?" And I go, "They aren't the host team. The majority of that crowd is cheering for the team that's playing this pitching and home run derby." Right? Like, boy, the last third of that game, I mean, TCU just erupted.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, that one, TCU Indiana State is the most interesting.
I like that one. That's a good choice.
Question number 2.
From 1 to 10, how worried are you about the Florida Panthers' chance at winning a Stanley Cup down 2-0?
Am I worried?
Yeah, you worried?
I'd be more worried if it were 3-0. I'd probably give it a 6 on my scale.
I was going to say 5. Plus, you heard Chuck, like,
dude, right now he's a liability.
Well, he's like backing the physical play.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like Dude, how long we been talking about him playing like this though?
Oh yeah,
it's just what he does.
Mm-hmm. It is,
and it's what their team does.
But finding his way into the penalty box,
you
got to stop.
You got to stay out of the sin bin. And your special teams was considerably better coming in, but you're not even giving yourself a chance.
Stop hanging your goaltender out to dry. My goodness. I don't care about counterattacks. I don't care about numbers.
Odd man rushes are a thing when you don't. Yeah, they're not. They're getting the. They're winning 50-50 pucks. It's like igniting the fast
they're just
break.
skating in the zone like there's no pressure.
I saw a stat yesterday maybe. We're 16.1% of Denver's possessions start on the fast break. Conversely, 5.1% of Miami.
Wow.
That's kind of how I feel about Vegas. Like these odd man rush. It's like, what is going on?
Figure it out.
Dude, you got to control the puck in the neutral zone, which they haven't.
Like I said,
I give it a 5.
Stop hanging your goaltender out to dry.
Question number 3.
A big hypothetical was going around last week asking how much you'd pay to hang out with a celebrity. Say you only got an hour. If you paid $10,000, who would you choose to spend your time with?
Warren Buffett.
Michael Jordan.
Well, that was easy.
Why would I say Warren Buffett?
I don't know.
For 1 hour, what am I going to ask him?
What do I invest in?
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%.
I don't even know if that's portable. It may be, right? You'll pay your 10 G's to figure out if it is portable.
Right.
I'd take Jordan. First thing I'd say was, why is Pippen such
mine's
a hater?
long-term investment.
No. Maybe we'd bond over the whole father thing. I don't know. I'd like to talk to Jordan.
Smoke cigars.
Hey, do you find it interesting that people are giving you a hard time about Caleb Martin? He used to be a Hornet. Remember those days? Nah, I'm just playing.
Not really.
Nah, I'm just serious.
I'd go with George Lucas.
Yeah. And why is Star Wars still a thing on Wheel of Fortune? Shane, why is Star Wars still a thing on Wheel of Fortune?
Oh, it'll always be.
Dude, a lady dressed up with like Darth Vader yesterday. She had on the black smock with the little light up belt thing. I'm like, what is going on?
Did she look good?
Not my style. I mean,
did the costume look good?
Also not his style.
Yeah, not my style. I'm not a cosplay guy, Shane.
Would you rather be someone that's really good at taking information or really good at teaching information?
Oh, that's a good one.
So more like taking feedback or taking just like being a student or being a teacher?
I prefer to be the sponge.
So
I want to get the information.
But if I'm a teacher, I already have the information.
That is correct.
So I think I'd rather be the teacher because I'd rather teach the next because then I'd already have the information from a student perspective. Or if I'm a teacher, do I not? This is like what I asked to Wyatt. Like in this hypothetical, do I not soak in any more knowledge? Am I just stuck in my ways that this is all I am? Because if so, then I'd be the student.
I'm no brainer for me. I'm the student.
I'd be the teacher.
It's a total reflection of our personalities too, to be honest. Like if we took profiles,
probably
it's totally our personalities.
Right. But you had to be a student to be a teacher at one point.
Yeah.
So
I'm kind of a lifelong guy. I always want to see what I can glean.
Right.
That's why I don't mind taking calls. That's why I don't mind negative feedback. See what I can learn.
I'm all for it.
What do you got?
Question number 5.
This one's kind of long, so bear with me.
Oh, Lord.
Your day job is obviously sports radio host, but you guys also talk about how you have passions and other things. Would you ever start a side hustle to lean into those interests more, and what would that side hustle be?
I'm only passionate about a couple of things.
See, the problem with one of my side hustles is I get attached to the tangible item, so I never want to get rid of it. Like I love rookie cards. And so every time I get a rookie card, I'm like, oh, I could flip this. I got it for a good price. But then I just don't want to get rid of it. So that I'm probably one of the worst businessmen out there in regards to that. But I'd probably want to do something in food, like invent a better way.
I'm passionate about
something in food.
That's funny, as I just sent you pictures of my smoked salmon yesterday.
Would you do like DB's barbecue?
I would get in. I would get involved in either food, and I'm pretty passionate about like the workshop culture, like how the mind works. So maybe I would try to empower. I certainly, and it's something short of a motivational speaker, but I would get into like team building with other entities.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty passionate about that.
Interesting. Shane, last one.
Who would you say is the best college football recruiter of the 21st century?
Is that from 2000 on? 2001 on? So last like 20 years? Could you get behind Pete Carroll?
Pete Carroll's in the discussion. Tosh Lapoy is in the discussion. Not a head coach, but
Nick Saban?
I may take Tosh.
I'll go Pete Carroll.
I like that. That's a good one, to be honest.
Joel Lorenzi coming your way next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
And then we just need to know where to be or what to do, what's the coverage or whatever. Keep playing basketball as hard as I can to win. I think we did that tonight at the win. You need to know what to do, and then we had a lot of miscommunication. You need to know what to do, and what's the coverage or whatever. Keep playing basketball as hard as I can, making plays for others. What's the coverage or whatever. Keep playing basketball as hard as I can, making plays for others. Score whenever I get the opportunity to do so. And
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
You need to know what to do, and then we had a lot of miscommunication and misunderstanding. They were getting open looks, especially in the beginning of the game, we have couple on the end of the game too. So you just need to know where to be or what to do, what's the coverage or whatever. Keep playing basketball as hard as I can, making plays for others, score whenever I get the opportunity to do so, and through all else, just find a way to win. I think we did that tonight as a group, and we'll continue to do that as a group.
That's Nikola Jokic. Not up. Geez, I almost said up 2-0. Should have been up 2-0.
You like everybody else. You got caught with your hands in the cookie jar.
1-1 is that series.
What's your go-to cookie?
Come
on, man.
I don't know.
See, then you don't have one.
Sugar, maybe?
Giving it too much thought.
Like, I don't eat, like, cookies on the regular.
I don't either. I don't eat a cookie a year, but I still have a go-to.
What's your go-to?
And why are you
Oatmeal
doing
Okay, Joel, I don't need to hear from you just yet.
Oatmeal raisin. Hey, he say, hey, stop laughing. Stop laughing.
Stop laughing.
Oh, man. I just didn't want to be OG and go chocolate chip. I'm not much of a chocolate chip cookie guy.
So
Depends on
don't think about saying it. It's not that hard.
Why I like chocolate chip cookie dough. Like, the edible cookie dough.
Joel, as we talk to our guest this week, do you have a go-to cookie, Joel?
I'm a classic dude. I always rock with chocolate chips, to be honest.
I'm a classic, man.
Hey, because I
why
hesitated.
Why am I not surprised, Mr. Old Soul?
You trying to sound predictable?
Oh, never that. Just going classic because you're not gonna overthink it, right? Like I could see. You know what I thought you may say? For real,
Don't say nothing weird, man.
Then I got to remember Chicago, right? I was gonna say macadamia.
Nah, that's a little too sweater vest for me, man.
Snickerdoodle.
I feel like that feels like a real privilege.
That's going to be my new thing. You seem like a privileged cookie kind of cat. You have no sense. All right, so wow, privileged cookie. I'm using that. Hey,
Oh my goodness.
Hey, another fantastic deep dive. You got into both, two of the in-state rosters. What made you give Nebraska a look-see? Did you like what they ended up doing? Because I feel like I told this to Drew Down last week. On paper, and I know they lost D-Walk and Griesel, but I actually feel like Nebraska on paper looks like a more Fred Hoiberg type team.
Yeah, well, I didn't give Nebraska the hardest look. Obviously, that's not my beat, but yeah, I think they're just fine. I like some of their pickups. I like Alex. Obviously, tough to replace some of the uses they lost, but for where they are and I guess their trajectory, I think they'll be okay. I mean, obviously, they probably overachieved, especially toward the end of last year and kind of their run they went on. But I think they could maybe do similar things, especially getting some of the guys back that got hurt and whatnot. I think they'll be okay.
Joel, one of our questions just in our previous segment was a would you rather, and it was, would you rather be someone that's really good at taking information or really good at teaching information? And in this case, you have Trey Alexander and Kalk coming back with a lot of information just over the last month and their ability to take feedback and how to now implement some of the things that they learned into next season. So based on their personalities, how much do you think we're going to see some of that feedback come to fruition this season?
I think you'll see it a lot. I mean, obviously, the staff plays a role in that too, in terms of how willing they are to infuse some of that into the game. And because I mean, some of this feedback stuff, like there are scenarios. I mean, I'm not saying that applies to Trey or Ryan, but there are scenarios with certain guys who get that draft feedback that
The feedback they do get can be disruptive for the flow of a game for a college team or whatever. Like if a team, let's say, wants you to create more or something like that, wants to see you, be capable as a ball handler and self creation, like that could be disruptive. Now, that was the feedback for either of them, so it'll be less difficult to see them work some of that stuff in. Obviously, scouts want to see Trey be on the ball more and get in the pick and roll and check guys up. More of that stuff, just showing that he can be more of a combo guard. And so I think that's less difficult, especially with the fit they have now next to Ashford. And then obviously Kalkbrenner is probably the one that would be more difficult. You probably got to give him a greener light from three if that's what he's going to show, if he's going to show that he's somewhat of a stretch or at least an improving shooter. I think as it stands, he'll probably have like a yellow light, but yeah, I don't think it'd be super difficult to work either of them and have that stuff show up in game.
All right, so Drew Down and I got into a little bit of a discussion. Some may call it a debate on the most important guy coming back, and it was between Kalk and Trey, and we both landed on Trey, but for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to one of my other good basketball hoops heads, Jacob Padilla, who didn't mince words. He said, by the way, went back and listened to the pod. You both got it wrong. It's Kalkbrenner. And so he and I were having this discussion literally on an elevator going back and forth. I make the case that the most room for upside and improvement is in Trey Alexander based on what you just described. The ball handling, the creativity. He's playing with a couple of other guys now that can handle the ball too, so he can diversify his game. I would conversely make the case if Creighton still wants to continue to be good at what they do defensively, Kalk kind of stays the same. He's a drop coverage guy, a rim protector. I don't know how he can expand a ton unless he does get stretchy, but that takes away from his offensive efficiency, which isn't really what you want to do. Am I talking myself into it, or do you agree?
No, I kind of agree with Jacob. Look, I've been thinking about this throughout the week too, because I think if they would have got just one or the other, like if they would have just ended up with just Kalk or just Trey, I think they would be screwed. Like we couldn't be talking about the ceiling that we're talking about now. But I did see somebody say that Kalk is a floor raiser and Trey is a ceiling raiser. But you can only say that once you have both. Like with one, we cannot be talking about this ceiling. And so I think with Kalk raising the floor as much as he does, I think he has to be the most important player because he was last year, and just how much of a walking defense he is. Was their leading scorer, obviously, due to some of the other guys drawing attention and just putting himself in great position so much of the time, his roll gravity, he is almost similarly important on both ends. And in terms of a defense, that's the dude that turns. I mean, Creighton is probably not even a top 100 defense if he's on the team.
Well, there's no question, but there's so much tape on him now, right? Like, do you think everybody's like I think they'll space the floor. I think they'll play smaller. I think they'll try the Villanova thing. Like sometimes because you're so. That's just my case. It's just me, right? I'm like, okay, people know where he's good. Mm-hmm. They know how to attack drop coverage. He's got to be able to change his game and come out on the floor and defend a little bit if you want to be able to take advantage of him. Can he adjust in that role is what I'm saying.
Well, your personnel is your personnel. And to be fair, he got Defensive Player of the Year in the Big East 2 years.
No, I understand.
They had tape on him going into last year.
So the numbers support you. They really do. Like we know they're better with him defensively by far. But do you? Yeah. And I know what you're saying. Your personnel is your personnel. But don't you think coaches, when they get in the lab with teams that want to ISO and ball screen and understand drop coverage, that he may have to change some? Could I make that case?
Yeah, but I think at this level, it's easier for him to switch multiple positions if need be, if he has to be in a clock situation or, team trying to put him in a tough spot. And it's easier for him to drop, too. We got to remember that it ain't as much space as the NBA. The ball handlers and creators here ain't as creative as the NBA or as talented. He'll be able to slide around just fine, I think. I mean, he'd probably get a third straight Defensive Player of the Year in the Big East if we're being real. And for what it's worth, like Trey, with them both, like I agree that Trey is the ceiling raiser. Like without him, like he puts that offense over the top now. He gives you a first option probably now, especially off the dribble and the clock scorer, tough shot maker, ball handler who's gonna be in a pick and roll. Like Trey gives you like they I would say they need both probably just as much. But when it comes down to it, like I got to think Kalkbrenner is probably a smidge more important just on how different that team is and
Yeah, I get it. That was kind of his thing, right? He was like, well, with Ash and Baylor, you have more like pieces. There isn't another Kalk on the roster. So in its simplest form, I get it, but I'm talking about, and I'm just married to the fact that it's like, okay, that's fine, but you have way more versatility with Trey than you do with Kalk.
Well, if Trey was like this overwhelming like driver and finisher, then I'd probably side with Trey. Because right now, the way I see it, I don't think people are talking about this enough. Ashworth, Trey, and Sharman, and then whoever they're gonna have at the 4, there's not enough rim pressure there, man.
Yeah, they got to get to the 10. I agree. I completely agree. Somebody, but and I think it's funny not to go all Jacob Badillar, but he said he said even with as much pressure as Nembhard put on the rim, he didn't love the fact that he didn't finish enough.
That's true. Yeah, and some of his finishes were short. Like he had some wacky finishes or missed some close range shots at times, but he got there, man. His burst, his craft, his handle, like he would get there, and the kickouts were there, man. Like that stuff matters. And I don't know whether it's the handle or the burst. Some of these dudes, I don't know how they're gonna get to the rim, and I think that's one thing Trey is missing. I think that's part of why the emphasis being a combo guard is there, because right now, like the burst isn't there to just go to the rim. He's not going to play really above the rim. He has a certain spots, but how easy does he get to them? Like there are stuff, like the things that are going to make him a first round pick. Like there are things for sure that he can work on.
That's interesting. Joel Lorenzi with us now. Creighton beat for the Omaha World-Herald at JX Lorenzi on Twitter. Kind of fit right into my next question a little bit, but it's almost as if you answered it. So I'm going to take it a different direction now. How do you think their experience going through the NBA draft combine will impact their maturity moving forward? So as different from what they can, what did they take away from it to learn and implement into their game, but more for their maturity as leaders, their maturity in gamesmanship upstairs in their own heads. Like how do you think that experience impacted them in that way?
Yeah, I think they just, they were around, everybody in that process was either the best player or the second best player on their college team or whatever team they played on. So you're just around great players, a lot of which who have their own voice and whatnot. And in those scenarios, to stand out, you got to project your voice. Like Kalkbrenner was calling out second switches. Like I think for as much as we saw him maybe be louder this year, I think he even found more of a voice at the combine. It's the only way you can survive. And then with Trey, I think just some of that feedback, I think it's just, and I kind of said it before, but it gives him something to really work for. Like we talked a lot about in his pitches to, to come back to Omaha, how much of a load he'd have to take on offensively. And now, not like he needed an incentive, but now he really has it in front of him. Like, okay, if I want to get drafted, like, I'm gonna have to do this stuff anyway. Like, if we want to get far as a team, I'm gonna have to do this stuff anyway. So I think the feedback was necessary, and hearing from it so much, and seeing, what not like he looked like the complete opposite of what his feedback was. I mean, he didn't show much of the combo guard stuff that week in Chicago, but seeing the alternatives and seeing, what's missing, I think helps him a ton.
Joel, real quick, getting to the NBA, do the Heat kind of regress back to the means in terms of their shooting, or are they what they are and you just continue to let Jokic score and try to stay attached to shooters?
I just can't believe, I cannot believe that the Heat are still pulling stuff off like they did the other day. I just thought it was, bro. And I didn't like Spo's answer in that press conference, because I didn't think that was the best question he got asked about whether you could turn Jokic into just a passer or just a scorer. But I didn't like his response because he knew that that wasn't that wasn't really how he felt. I mean, obviously you respect Jokic, but that wasn't really how he felt.
I do think he wouldn't mind him taking 28 shots though.
I mean, I don't think that's why they lost, to be honest. Like it was a factor, sure, but that's not why they lost. I mean, it was small breakdowns down the stretch that I thought helped them lose that lead. Like I think back to letting Duncan Robinson dribble drive, and Jamal Murray jumping out his briefs out to Duncan Robinson for that three, and he just sidesteps. Like I could think of a handful of breakdowns that put them out of the game. And that was stuff that, I mean, it felt like Miami was getting advantages that they just didn't have the game before versus, Denver was getting advantages earlier between the cross matches with Aaron Gordon and transition, like doing stuff that made Miami look helpless. And now Miami got a fighting chance to the Duncan Robinson. Come on, man.
Okay. So your role players typically play better at home than on the road. Are you over or not? Do you no longer use the term role players with Heat? Is their roster just their roster now?
I don't think so.
I don't want to call them a team of role players. I mean, some of these dudes could start on other teams. Like I like Caleb Martin to start on a good handful of teams. Gabe Vincent, I think, could be a starter in a lot of places. But it does seem like their core is so role player-ish, man. Like, and for what it's worth, they got good ones, man. Like I think a lot of those dudes are similarly talented, even if they have different skill sets. Like they're similarly talented, which helps them. So there's not a huge drop off from player to player once you get to, like, I don't know, the fourth, fifth guy, maybe even third, really, if Caleb Martin is the third option.
Joel, who do you think is getting the most attention during this playoff run? Would you say it's Miami and the inexplicable effort that they put forth every night, the team that puts the skeptics to shame, or the Nuggets, who have arguably been the best team all year, has the lineup of names to prove it, but doesn't get talked about near enough because they aren't the cool special story?
Okay, ask the first part of your question.
The first part just was simple. Who do you think is getting the most attention nationally during this playoff run?
Oh, geez. I'm not sure either are getting their due. Maybe. I think the individuals like Jokic and Jimmy probably are getting enough attention. But
that's fair.
As for each team, I don't know. I mean, it's just this has felt like based on coverage and even like this is a separate issue, but like the on-court look, like it feels less like a finals than ever before. And I don't think that's based on talent or the teams. I think it's based on the coverage, the way, networks and writers are covering this series. It feels different than in recent years. And then like my issue was the on-court look. And I've seen a few people kind of back this too. I think Tyrese Halliburton tweeted it out. Like, yo, they need to put Larry O'Brien in the middle of the floor. They got to do their thing with the ESPN ABC graphic for the scoreboard. Like, it doesn't look like a final series. It looks like I'm watching the conference finals. I mean, what happened to all the finals nostalgia, bro? Like the stuff that lets you know, like, hey, you're watching the finals. Like it feels absent.
Do you know what that is, though? I think they fell victim to how they felt the series was going to go. They may wake up and this thing's at Game 7, and they didn't treat it the way that they were supposed to.
Thinking as if the Nuggets
we were
win.
Referencing Father MC earlier. Treat them like they want to be treated. I think even the Crews, especially if Miami wins this next one and they go up 2-1, then all of a sudden they may have to recommit some finances. Better send some more folks to cover this thing, right? Because I'm with you. It seemed like an afterthought until it's actually happened. Or is it this, Joel? Let me ask you this, because you're a hoops head. Is it because TNT is so much better than ABC, ESPN?
Well, I don't want to cut myself out of a job here. I'll say this. TNT, bro, I prefer
I'm done.
ESPN Crew over TNT. Because they serve different purposes. TNT will entertain you, and they also have Reggie Miller. But ESPN is more like, I guess, informative. Well, no, ESPN has come down to entertainment now too. But I think their play-by-players will really inform you more. I think TNT is like, in terms of entertainment, they're better, but I don't know if I could say either. I don't know. Maybe I'll point to ESPN instead of TNT. I don't think TNT, if they are better, I don't think it's overwhelming enough to where I have to agree with you.
I primarily say that because that's all TNT does. Obviously ESPN, ABC, they got to diversify the portfolio, right? Like, but TNT, like that, the NBA is what they do.
What do you mean? What, entertain or
no? Like they don't have anything else to really worry about. They cover
TNT.
Basketball,
Oh, NHL right. During the playoffs. That's about it.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I try to go like talent for talent, like Rose and Perk and like Richard Jefferson and those guys versus like Kenny, Shaq, Charles. I don't know. The entertainment thing versus willingness to speak out, I think, might be something different too. Maybe Perk belongs on TNT. I don't know.
Maybe.
I think they got enough knuckleheads over there.
Yeah, I'm not a Perk
and we have enough knuckleheads on this show
I'm not
too.
A Perk guy either. That's code for what Joel said.
Joel, man, enjoy the rest of the day. We appreciate you hopping on. We'll talk again next week.
Yes, sir. Talk to you.
More CNC next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club, where you should spend every afternoon, every evening watching your favorite sporting events. But if you find yourself downtown during the College World Series, maybe during opening weekend, you should check out Omaha Design Center College World Series Kickoff Party. That is their opening day celebration, but you need tickets to get in. What do you get when you're there? Well, it's a pre-party experience, so it's a live DJ. They have yard games. They have a private bathroom. They have air conditioning and all the game day food and drinks you can imagine. Fully stocked bar. You can reserve your kickoff party tickets for $20 a person at omahaeventgroup.ticketleap.com. And this will take place, Friday, June 16th at the Omaha Design Center off 15th and Cumming Street. 4 o'clock. That's when the doors open, 4 p.m. That's when the party will begin.
If nothing else,
does the
get
party
parking.
ever end?
It's right there.
The party never ends.
Party on. Player.
Now, if you party a little bit too hard and you find yourself in need of assistance, maybe from personal injury, you can call the Dyer Law team. And Dyer Law is there to help you in any way you need it, no matter what you're dealing with. You can call the Dyer Law team at 402-393-7529. Visit Dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your personal injury claim. That's Dyer, D-Y-E-R .law. You know who may be feeling a little bit of personal injury are the how do I put this nicely? The Get Off Your Lawn PGA people.
Walt Kowalski
that were out there up until this point of a merger taking place between the PGA and the LIV. Thank you for the breaking news music, Shane.
Yeah.
This was inevitable.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So I got to give credit to a couple of people. Number one wasn't who did the biography on Phil? Who did the book on Phil, Shane, that we had on? And Phil was upset with him because he kind of had a negative. He made it feel like it was a little bit of a negative slant, and he kind of talked about Phil's gambling a little bit and kind of his progress on the tour. And I can't remember who.
Yeah,
it was.
I'm sorry, I can't either.
And Dirk Chatlin, we had Dirk on that, and it was that week too.
Oh, it was the same week, yeah.
Yeah, and Dirk was like, these guys are kind of being a little disingenuous. And I asked him, I said, is this because you're a Phil fan? And he's like, no. He said, no, just think about it logistically, right? Like the sponsorships, the PGA needs to kind of button it up. They need to treat their members better. These guys are going back and forth with the ability to make money. He thought it was a little disingenuous to say kind of how it was being handled. He didn't use the term self-righteous, but that's the sense that I got when he was talking about it. And he said it from like the jump. Like, come on, this is going to be much ado about nothing. I looked at it and I told you off air, I said, well, there's just too much money to be had between the two, right? If you're going to share, I mean, Saudi's got to be tired of just throwing money at it. And you get the merger where you get the exposure. And what you said, your first response was they want the what?
They want the players back.
Yeah.
They want the top guys back. Not that they couldn't make work with what they had. Jeez, Andrew, speak. Not that they couldn't work with what they had. There you go. But they want those big names back. You don't have a guy named Brooks Koepka win the PGA championship and not have him on the PGA.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want that. So you want those big names back. You want the Phils back. You want the DeChambeaus back. You want the Koepkas back. You want the is it Smith? Yeah, Smith, not Young. Smith's back. So by getting these big names back, now you're getting the best players back on the PGA. And ultimately, that's what it boils down to.
What are they going to do with Brandon Chambly? And can he say sports washing now? Hey, how about him and Harmon going at it?
Yeah.
That was just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, but
he referenced the sports washing term, and people I know they
good,
don't like
clean fun.
They don't like Chambly to begin with, and I don't either.
Right.
So it's fine, but man, I wonder what the narrative is going to be, because that was literally just a week or two ago.
Right.
He dropped the sports washing reference again during the broadcast.
Yeah. So
anyway, that's why sometimes discretion is the better part of valor.
Amazing Daniel brings up an interesting point, or maybe an interesting take. Only thing bigger would be the XFL USFL merger next year. Like, could you imagine if like those?
I think
merged?
he's being sarcastic.
I know.
I just told him about himself yesterday.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Nothing's as big as the PGA and LIV.
He told me last night. He said it's not that he swims upstream; he has his own channel.
Yeah, that probably is it.
If there was
and at least he knows it,
more
right?
fitting for his personality.
Yeah, at least he knows it.
I kind of
at least he's comfortable with that.
No, it wasn't Bo, but yeah, it's just a lot of. I wonder what all the because a lot of people thought it was kind of their patriotic due diligence to bash, the Saudi money.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, there's going to be a lot of backtracking.
So, okay, I don't know enough about it. You may not, but I'm going to ask the question, and maybe we can figure it out. So Saudi obviously has a boatload of money.
Mhm.
PGA has been pretty tight with their purse. So now that they've merged, is it hey, the LIV and PGA are taking more of a PGA approach, or is the purse just going to be substantially bigger like it was in the LIV?
Now that I don't know. I mean, it is a country, and some of what they, I imagine. I don't know what the splits are going to be of the revenue or who's the backing. Because there has to be some sort of sharing, right?
Right.
Because who had the upper hand?
Probably the PGA.
You would think
because of,
but
just
the Saudis
immediate backing
had the
funding,
the capital. At least so we think.
Mm-hmm. But people were still watching the PGA more because the PGA was the thing.
Zero question.
So that's why I would guess they had the leg up.
We weren't getting the LIV tournaments
right here. Like you could, there were times. I think there was one in Chicago at one point. And,
I'm talking about,
but on nationally televised.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. So I don't know. Is there? This is an interesting point right here from 515 Dave on YouTube. Is the PGA moving more towards player contracts?
So that was one of the natural byproducts, I think, that the folks on the LIV tour were after. They wanted the sponsorships to be handled differently,
right,
amongst the PGA in terms of
they wanted
golfer power,
security.
Yeah, and maybe this was the natural byproduct. Okay, can we have some more assurances now? Can you treat us better as a quote unquote commodity? Because I think that was a big sticking point for folks that were playing overseas, right? They're like, why would we limit ourselves? Do you know what's really? And I think that's why Dirk thought, and Shane, maybe we bring him back on just for GP. I know he's kind of semi-retired.
Oh, we could do that any day.
But I would love to get his thoughts because he was way out in front of this. Because he was actually the same week that Phil's that we Shane. Do we know who wrote the?
I was looking. I don't have the information anymore.
No, you're terrible at Google, Shane. I think you could just simply Google. Yeah, that.
My apologies. Well, while you look that up, what I think about in this too is, just to your point about player contracts and wanting a sense of security, there aren't a lot of people in this world that can do what they do, right? There are plenty of people out there.
Usually the more finite the skill.
Right. That can, put on a football uniform and be successful in whatever it is.
Yep.
There's plenty of people that can pass a soccer ball. And I know there's finite details into each person's sport, but it is extremely difficult to hit a ball from 180 feet or 180 yards and put it within feet of the hole and then bury a putt, whether it's from distance or from close. It's extremely difficult. So they know that. And because they know they're so unique in that, that's why they kind of have every bit of leverage inside their backpack to carry along with them to this point.
Tell you what, I'm looking at all the memes and the GIFs. You're the one that Aaron just retweeted.
Team comment page. Team comment page. This is what I threw out there for my form of the handshake.
Oh, that's cute. There's the fist bump, the wrap up.
Oh man!
I'll show you the ribeye he did the other day. Look at that bad boy.
That's some solid color on the inside.
Yes, indeed.
It's well cooked. Let's talk to Aaron Fitt after the break.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Moore a drive, deep right, going, gone. Malcolm Moore homers for the second consecutive game, and the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year puts Stanford up 4-1.
It is that time. The Super Regionals are set, and we're talking about it now. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, the road to Omaha. What are they at their final pit stop? You bet.
It's a hard championship to win, man.
You bet. You want to be one of the final 8? Well, you have to make it here first. And we are going to talk to Aaron Fitt now. Aaron is, well, let's just say he's well-versed in this topic.
We just call him Fitty. Mr. Fitt.
He's the co-editor and national writer for D1 Baseball at Aaron Fitt on Twitter. Aaron, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How are we doing today?
Oh, man, it is I'm like, gosh, we need to book him for more time. Let me just start with this real quick and get this out of the way, because I know you're pretty even-keeled, and I think you're 4 players. What were your thoughts all season long as you're watching all these ejections and sportsmanship being forced this year? Were you losing your mind, or were you like, okay, I get it?
Well, I think it's frustrating when you look at ejections being up, by a factor of 2, right? It's twice as many ejections as we had a year ago. And, that was a point of emphasis for the rules committee in the off season, was to try to curb some of the excessive celebrations and unsportsmanlike behavior, if you want. I think they need to go back to the drawing board on this because, it's like Kyle Peterson said on one of the broadcasts this weekend. I mean, you don't want to take emotion out of the game. It's part of it. Now, I don't love, taunting. I don't love when you're directing your emotion at the opposing team. And it does feel like there's been a lot more of that going on in the last few years. But I mean, ultimately, especially in these postseason games, it just feels like, it's gone too far. I feel like we've gone too far with the policing, and I hate the automatic 1-game suspension with this process. That's probably my biggest concern at this point.
Crippled Clemson, didn't it?
It really hurt him. I mean, one of their best players suspended for chirping an opponent from 40 feet away.
Yeah.
I mean, in the 13th inning. Come on.
Aaron, 9 of the 16 1 seeds remain, but out of the 7 that bowed out during opening weekend, and we're guaranteed at least one repeat qualifier from last year, but out of the 1 seeds that did bow out, Arkansas, Clemson, Vandy, Miami, Coastal, and Auburn.
Yep.
And did I nail those? Which one are you most shocked that we won't be seeing play a super regional?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like most of these regionals were pretty competitively balanced from the beginning. And
I thought Clemson got a brutal draw.
I thought so too.
I thought seeing Tennessee as a 2 was unfair.
Yeah, I agree. And so I guess that would be, that said, Clemson was really, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, they won 17 games in a row, and then they lost 2 games in 17 hours. But we can't say that's shocking because, as you said, Tennessee's, was dangerous. We all saw it right away. I guess Arkansas, I really liked that team a lot and just thought, the way they play at home. But then you saw a red-hot TCU team come in there, and I was like, I don't know. I can see that one. I picked Arkansas, but, that one was a little surprised. Auburn, I wasn't surprised by. I picked Southern Miss. Oklahoma State, I wasn't surprised by. So Vanderbilt, I picked Oregon in that one. So, most of the ones that went down, I wasn't shocked. I guess Miami was the one that I had the most faith in. And Texas, you didn't know what to expect from that.
Yeah,
Texas
they got
team.
off the mat, didn't they?
Yeah, it's just, they've just been so up and down, and they won a part of the Big 12 title. Clearly they were doing some things right this year, and then they looked terrible in the conference tournament. And it's like, what Texas team are we going to get here? And the one we got looked pretty darn good.
So I think each of the 3 is a little bit different. But when you look at who you trust, whose staff do you trust out of the SEC? Do you like the potential of Florida, the preseason promise of Tennessee? And then there's that team in LSU that's top heavy with Skeen, but they have their questions. Who do you trust the most heading into the Supers?
I suppose I would say Florida, and I say that having just watched South Carolina look really, really good.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Yeah, a team that wasn't even all that healthy.
No, they certainly weren't for the last month. They've gotten healthier. They're not 100%, but they're a lot closer now.
Yeah.
And they look this weekend like the team that I saw sweep Florida back in April in Columbia. And so I like Florida's team a whole lot. I think they're the better team, but that version of South Carolina we just saw, it was a buzzsaw for 3 straight games there. And Florida, had to come through the loser's bracket. But I liked the way Florida did it. They really didn't leave any doubt coming back and once they lost that first game. They kind of dominated the rest of the weekend. So I guess I would say the Gators, but it's just, LSU, maybe that's the answer. Kentucky is good. They've had a really nice year, but I don't love that matchup for Kentucky. I think that's the matchup where LSU would probably set up in their favor. So I had to bet for sure on one of these teams to get to Omaha. I would say LSU.
Fitty, stay right there with Kentucky because they made their opponents sleep in dorms on campus, instantly putting a target on their back where I'd say college baseball fans at least put the target on their back of, hey, I don't want to root for that team because of how things went down. Meanwhile, you have the sycamore trees, Indiana State, that are moving out of state to have their super regional take place at TCU so that they could continue to host the Special Olympics event at that field. So I say that to ask, how much has Indiana State won the hearts of college baseball fans during this entire process of being a team that has never been here before? They're making their first super regional appearance. Then they're winning over the community by moving the super regional out and being unselfish.
Yeah, it's a great story, you know, and if you watch that team play, their style of play is really fun. It's an easy team really for fans to get behind. You know, it's unfortunate that they had the scheduling conflict there. I mean, those home fans, they had a great atmosphere this past weekend. They would have loved to have had that home super. And instead, you're going into the Lions Den. You know, Lupton can get pretty wild in the postseason, especially. So, you know, that's a tough break. But I mean, this stuff happens from time to time. I mean, remember when Missouri State was a top 8 seed and they won their regional, and you know they shared their ballpark with a minor league team. The minor league team was home, so they had to play their super in Fayetteville. You know, which that didn't work out well. We're trying
to get into the matchups. Does familiarity breed contempt? Kentucky knocked skiing around in their series. They lost 2 out of 3, but it was pretty competitive, even a 1-run loss. Is LSU a team that you think could be in trouble seeing a familiar opponent?
I mean, maybe. You know, it's one of those things that it kind of works both ways, right? I mean, maybe this time around LSU's more equipped to know what they're getting into. But I mean, it also, I mean, it probably emboldened Kentucky. They're not going to be intimidated. You know, they know they can beat these guys. So yeah, I think that's fascinating because it's really contrasting styles there. You've got the big power hitting LSU team. You've got a Kentucky team that loves to play the small ball and the speed game and can beat you that way. So LSU's got to be sharp. But also, if LSU is able to build an early lead, Kentucky's not really built to come back. You know, like we've seen a lot of these teams, you know, like was it Stillwater, somebody got down 8-0 and just no problem. You know, we'll just put up a 16 spot.
That's kind of how I felt Duke was playing all year. As a North Carolina honk in the ACC, Duke would just home run their way back into games.
Yeah, for sure. And this weekend, boy, I was down there yesterday for the finale in Conway, speaking of Duke. But they looked awesome, man. I mean, that is a
huge baseball team.
And the story of MJ Metz,
dude, how
even better.
Fitty, how big is Duke in person?
just size?
They'd look big.
They are. I mean, you got 3 guys in the order. It goes 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", and right in a row, just a bunch of grown men. You know, and it's MJ Metz. He talked about. He's this year's Tim Elko. He's playing on 1 ACL. He had 4 home runs this weekend. It's just you know, it's awesome when you see that kind of stuff. And I saw him afterwards. You know, he's lifting up one of their assistant coaches, who's probably about my size, and it's like a child. You know.
This year's Tim Elko. Don't tell people that though, Fitty, because that's going to attach people to Duke. Now we talked about intriguing matchups on the show too, and Oregon, Oral Roberts was it for me. TCU, Indiana State was it for DB. Are one of those 2 matchups the most intriguing of the super regionals for you, or do you have another that you like more?
I think Tennessee Southern Miss is very intriguing. We've got Southern Miss and Scott Berry's last hurrah here with the loved coach down there. It's going to be electric, you know, down there in Hattiesburg. In fact, they get to host a super in the last run for Coach Berry, and you get the Vols coming in. You know, the team that still has probably got that reputation as college baseball's villains, even though they've toned it down a lot this year. You know, a team that was preseason number 2, Tennessee, and because of all the star power on the mound in particular, all those guys are still there. They kind of figured out how the pieces fit together on the mound. And they played better. They played great in Clemson. But they haven't been very good on the road all year long. I mean, this was the first winning road weekend they had in the regional. And so how will they respond this weekend? I think that one is going to be a lot of fun.
Now, I get it. They're an 8 national seed, and I think people like Stanford. And listen, Matthews was fantastic yesterday, closing the door in the middle of that game. But people talk about their offense. Hey, is Stanford for a national seed flying under the radar?
I think so.
I mean, I kind of get that sense.
I picked them to win it all this year in heading into the tournament. And I didn't see anything this weekend that changed my mind because, you know, I just think here's what I like about them. They're super physical and they're old. They've been to Omaha twice in a row. And they show they can come through losers bracket. They're a tough team. Keep an eye on those guys.
That actually may be my pick, Fitty. I'm dead serious. I may ride with you on that.
I don't think it's a bad one.
Do it.
He's like, join the cult.
Yeah.
Do it. Aaron Fitt, we appreciate you, man. Enjoy the Super Regionals.
We'll see you when you get here, buddy.
All right, guys. Take care.
It's Aaron Fitt, co-editor and national writer for D1 Baseball at Aaron Fitt on Twitter. Tomorrow we can get into more talk like this. Another point I'd like to bring up based on what we talked about today in regards to Nebraska football, all that and more tomorrow. Stick around, more CNC.